So today, as I sort of mentioned the concept of why I did it, what we're going to cover is the whole concept of buying a home and should you buy versus rent and what does that math look like. I'm not going to make you do any math, but I'll illustrate what things to consider and the benefits of buying a home. Really a market snapshot. The market is constantly changing. And there's some key elements that you must need when you've decided to buy a home and that you know, what you need financially. And Joe's going to go into what you need to do from a financial perspective, because that's critical in the whole process. And then, I want to talk about some ways to get creative. And, real estate is very much a long-term game, and there may be a number of steps or a number of properties to get where you want to go and in different forms. But the good news is you're in the market and you're trying there. So I'm going to talk to you about different ways that maybe you've heard of or maybe not heard of, to just try to open up your mind to navigating this market, because it is a challenge, but it's totally navigatable, if that's even a word, right? And of course, lots of time for question and answer. So sort of on the whole premise of getting creative, I kind of look at the sort of the 5 W's on what to do. And so when you're looking at, that first purchase, it's often because of the prices. And if you're young in your career, that may not be the house that is your long-term dream home, right? I have my first home was a townhome, and I actually still have it. And so I designed it, in a way that I was able to keep that and buy extra homes and leverage equity and do all kinds of creative things to get a few rental properties under my belt. So, getting that first property is, you want to get creative. So who you might buy with. The reason I say who is often if there is a substantial down payment required or an income level. Joe will talk about what some of the requirements are. But, there's opportunity that you may know someone that's in the same boat as you that just falls a little short of being able to qualify for something. So I see and I'll talk about some examples, co-buying with someone, be that a sibling, a friend in the same situation, someone in your family. And even there's some matching services that are out there, if you can believe it, on that, because it is a problem when you don't earn enough money, but you want to buy a home. Then what you will buy, as I mentioned, my first property was a townhome, which is vastly different than the home that I built for myself. It took me a number of years and a number of buys and sells to get there. So what does that look like? Is it a condo? Is it a town? Is it a detached home out of town? And that's sort of keeping with the where to buy. So having an open mind, with many of us working from home more often, there has been many people buying outside of the city because they don't have to travel in as much. Although I just saw an article today that said that, some people are moving back, but some people are not. So sort of where, and I've given you an example of where, and when's the best time to buy, especially with interest rates rising. And, I'm going to talk about sort of the rationale and why are you buying. And, there is a long-term commitment to it. So you need to be committed to the process. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the benefits of buying. So the why. So why buy a home? So when you rent a property, of course, that monthly outlay of money goes to your landlord. So that helps your landlord pay their expenses if they carry a mortgage, that type of thing. You don't benefit financially per se. I mean, yes, you do have a roof over your head and but the monthly outlay, there's nothing left from that outlay that contributes to you other than having a place to live. So it's really lining the pockets of the landlord. I shouldn't say it like that because I'm also a landlord, but in effect, it's really helping the landlord build their portfolio, right? And on this chart here, it just demonstrates all of the different types of properties, single family homes, towns, apartment style condos. As you can see from 2005, all of those lines are showing that the value of homes have been steadily increasing for the last 15 or more years, historically, even going back 50. The trend line is continually an upswing. There may be dips, but it's trending upward. as you get there. So what that means is when you've purchased a home, you benefit by having more money and equity, as we call it, in your home by its growth in value, just for the sheer fact of being in the market and the market goes up. So there's a way that you, again, gain more money by owning just by the sheer fact that prices continue to rise and you benefit from that. And when it comes to owning real estate, often that's a big part of people's financial stability and planning. And generally, it's usually the person's biggest asset. So if you commit to your property long-term and you're ready to retire and downsize, there's quite a little bit of a nest egg that's there for you. So it really has a number of benefits. And I'm going to talk to you about that math that I've done already for you. Actually, I didn't do it. The Royal LePage did a study just on this whole concept and what would it mean for buying versus renting. So in this particular report, they had the same property where they looked at what would it cost to rent it versus buy it. So in that little house there on the screen, it's showing that it would be like $2,700 and something if you rented that property. Exact same property, if you were to purchase it, is $3,300. So yes, it's costing more. However, when you look at that money bag of that $3,300, you're getting to $769 per month as a pay down of your mortgage. So that's way that versus paying the landlord, you're paying yourself and you're developing equity when you're paying your mortgage. Some of that is actually paying off your loan. So you're financially benefiting, even though you're paying a little bit more, you're recouping that plus some. So if you look on a 5-year horizon, which is a very, a typical length of time for a mortgage, if you took that $769 per month over that 5 years, $46,000 would be what you would have paid down. So that was money that you don't see it because it's paying down your mortgage, but you will see it when you go to move to your next property or something like that. And so remember in that previous slide, what happens to property values? They go up. So you're gaining equity that way. You're paying down your mortgage and you're gaining more equity by paying that $46,000 in this example off every 5 years. So those are the benefits that you're gaining, that financial stability versus when you're renting. So it's done me well. And so I'm hoping that it's something that you would consider as well. So I know it's all about me. We will send you over to Joe, but I've got a couple of more slides before I do that. And I just wanted to recap the market, okay? We, last one of these webinars we did was in March, right at the beginning of March. And what was happening then is very different than what's happening now. So we have had 2 interest rate increases. So what does that mean? Well, it's impacted the amount, borrowing costs, and that has contributed to a slowing of the market. Still a seller's market. It's still busy, but the days of multiple offers where you would be, running to an offer, showing up, going to offer night, along with 10, 20 other offers, those days we're not really seeing them. And the multiple showings on a property, we're not seeing that either. Now, there still are showings, there still are offers, it's much softer. So if you're a seller, it's a different experience. But as a buyer, that means good news, there's less competition. Now it's costing a little bit more because interest has gone up, but definitely it's a much less competitive environment. So, it is a challenge with those interest rates because it's going to cost you a little bit more. And because there's not a lot of inventory, it still means the sellers are in the driver's seat a little bit. That is leveling off, but still we are still in what we call a seller's market. So the fact that interest rates are going up, that's a challenge. The sellers have a bit of an advantage because there's a shortage of inventory, and that's going to continue for a while. You've got some very stressed out buyers, you have some stressed tests that you have to fall through, and sometimes your realtor's a little stressed, to be honest. But there is opportunities within every challenge. So as I mentioned, there is a less heated market because the interest rates have gone up. there has been a little bit more inventory come on the market. So that means there's more to choose from. And because there's not such a flurry of offers, there's a greater chance of getting a property where just a few months ago, buyers were losing out on, 3, 5, 10 or more offers before they secured a home. Now it's quite likely that, that's not going to happen, and you can get, your home on your first 1, 2, or even, 3 purchases, that type of offers, pardon me. So it's just easier to buy a home than it was in the heat of the market. But don't kid yourself, it still is quite a brisk market. And definitely still a little bit of a seller's market, but there still is a better chance of you securing that home. And as I mentioned, within these challenges and opportunities, always thinking creative and how you can do that because of the rise and the raise of interest rates and the raise in the cost of homes over the last couple of years. Always working with those experts and a good mortgage agent who I'll introduce you to in a second, and a realtor that will help you navigate that. So, there's so many scenarios and so many things that can happen and so many ways to approach things. So please, feel free to reach out to me and book a consultation with you. There'll be a booking link. Sarah will actually put it in the chat if you wanted to book some time and talk to me about your particular situation. But, definitely opportunities, and we can help navigate the challenges. So love to hear from you. So really, I just had, sort of my little coined statement of it. Really, we're in unconventional times. And so really, unconventional thinking is what's called for. Okay, enough of me for now. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe Gianola, our mortgage expert with a wealth of experience, and he's going to go through what you need to navigate buying a home in this market and the things that they look at, and how he can help and the things that you should consider. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Joe.
There we go. All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Heidi. Again, my name is Joe Gianola. I've worked for RBC, I've worked for Scotiabank, I've worked for Sagen Mortgage Default Insurance. So basically, my job for the beginning of my career was my job to approve or decline the mortgage applications. Now I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. So now it's my job to submit them and to get them approved. I represent the client now instead of the lender. So, like Heidi mentioned before, I know all the landmines and I know how to avoid them. Trust me, there's a lot of landmines. And if you're working with somebody who doesn't know what they are, it could cost you a deal. So I want to talk about the 3 main parts about qualifying for a mortgage. Before I get into this, so at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little chat button. Okay, so if you have questions throughout the presentation, just type them in the chat button. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll do a quick Q&A, and I'll try to, and Heidi and I will go through the questions at the end. Okay, so let's start with income. So the 3 most common types of income are salary, hourly employees, and self-employed. Okay. Salary is very straightforward. So if someone is paid, say, $70,000 a year salary, then when I qualify the application, I can use that salary. So it doesn't really matter how long you've been in your job. The salary is a salary. It's very straightforward. Okay. If you're an hourly employee, so you get paid by the hour. Now, if you have guaranteed hours, meaning you're guaranteed, say, 40 hours a week, let's just say, then I can use that. I could take your hourly rate, multiply it by 40, and multiply that by 52, and that's how much I could use. If you work a lot of overtime or you get bonuses, then I can use a 2-year average. Okay. Where hourly becomes tricky is if you're in a job where your hours are not guaranteed and you've been in the job for less than 2 years, sometimes that could be a little bit challenging. Okay, so those are some unique situations. And then finally, self-employed. Self-employed can be really tricky. The banks love people who pay a lot of money in taxes. So if you're self-employed and you claim a whole bunch of income on your taxes and you pay a ton of money in taxes, then chances are we'll be able to get you a great mortgage with a low interest rate and no fees and all that fun stuff, just like if you were salaried or if you had guaranteed hours. But if you're self-employed and like me, you don't want to pay money in taxes, and you write off as much as you possibly can, that can make things a little bit trickier. Okay. Again, there's strategies around all of these things. And I don't want to get into too in depth, but that kind of gives you an idea of what the lenders are looking for. What they want to see is consistency, right? A salary is very consistent. It's the same paycheck every 2 weeks. You have guaranteed hours, same paycheck every 2 weeks. You're self-employed. They look over the past 2 years. How much did you claim on your income taxes? Again, consistency. So those are the main income sources. So in a mortgage application, in an environment where, purchase prices, like Heidi said, it's still definitely a seller's market. Purchase prices are still very high. You want to have as much income as possible. So a good strategy would be to have a cosigner, right? Like a family member, a parent, a sibling, who can go on the application with you to bump up the amount of income that we could use on the application. Okay. An ideal cosigner is someone with little debt and decent income, right? Like if you have somebody who, say, doesn't have a mortgage, so they own their home free and clear, and maybe they have a couple of pensions, like a retiree, that's a perfect cosigner. Okay. Next, down payment. Okay, so down payment makes a huge difference. You can have a down payment as low as 5%. Okay. So, but the smaller the down payment, the harder it is to qualify, or I shouldn't say the harder it is to qualify, the less you'll qualify for. Okay. So if you have, say, the minimum 5% down, then your maximum amortization is 25 years. Your mortgage will be stress tested at 5.25%, or whatever the contract rate is plus 2%. So that what that does is it kind of really shrinks how much you qualify for. Also, if you're doing the minimum down payment, say like 5 or 10% down, then you have to pay an insurance premium. Insurance premium is expensive. I mean, we're talking like $15,000, $20,000, $25,000. The nice part is that you don't have to pay it up front. It just gets added right onto your mortgage. Most first-time home buyers fall in that category, right? So they've got 5 or 10% down. They often have a cosigner, and they're usually buying something, between 500, 800,000, somewhere in that ballpark. Now, if you want to avoid that big premium, then you need 20% down. Okay. With 20% down, which is also called a conventional mortgage, there's a lot of options. So you can have a 30-year amortization. You could go to a traditional lender like a bank or credit union. You could go to alternative lenders. You can go to private lenders. You could get progress draw mortgages if you want to build your own home. There's lots of different options when you have 20% down. Okay. So for instance, if you're self-employed and you don't, say you only claim like $20,000 a year. Well, if you only claim 20, but maybe your business generates millions of dollars a year in revenue, you just chose to only pay yourself $20,000. That can cause problems with a bank. But with an alternative lender, that's no problem because they don't look at your tax returns, right? An alternative lender will look at your business bank account statements. They'll look at cash flow, not what you claim on your income taxes. Okay. And also the last thing I want to talk about is, again, whenever you're buying your first home, if you already own a home, it's easy. You just sell one house, you get a whole bunch of money and you use it to buy another one. If you're a first-time home buyer, a lot of times people have help from family, right? So they'll have a parent or a sibling gift them money to help them get into the market. right? So whenever you're buying your first home, that's the time when you want to ask for favors. And then finally, credit. Credit's pretty straightforward. Um, if you want to deal with a traditional lender, or if you want to have a mortgage with 5 or 10% down, you got to have a good credit score, right? So ideally 700 or higher. You want to have at least 2 trade lines, meaning like 2 credit cards, or maybe a credit card and a loan, or like a car loan and a line of credit, something like that. You want to have 2 paid as agreed for 2 years. Okay, so 2 credit cards paid perfect for 2 years, and your credit score will go through the roof. And pretty much every lender under the sun will be happy with something like that. If you do have bruised credit or thin credit, meaning not a lot of credit, there's options for you as well. Okay, a lot of times though, like for instance, like a new to Canada, there's a new to Canada program with Sagen or CMHC where they use alternative credit sources instead of like a Canadian credit bureau. Or if you have poor credit, meaning like maybe you've been through a bankruptcy or you've had a consumer proposal, maybe you have like a number of outstanding collections or a lot of recent late payments. There's options for that as well, but typically you're going to need a 20% down payment for that type of mortgage. But yeah, so there are a lot of options out there. The best thing to do is to get pre-approved or pre-qualified. I could do that for you. So what we do is we take an application, we go through your income, we go through your down payment options, we look at your credit. And from there, we can create, I'd let you know what's called a price ceiling. So you know the maximum that you can purchase. So it makes it a lot easier to go shopping. And then I can also tell you whether or not you're going to need a condition of financing. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I think I'm going to pass it back to you, Heidi.
Thank you very much, Joe. A wealth of information always. And I guess I just wanted to sort of jump in there. Just on the market and that term condition of financing, for those of you that are sort of new to the whole concept, until recently in the heat of the market, conditions of financing weren't even really an option. And what that means is when you put together an offer, if you put a condition in it, you're saying, I'm going to finalize this offer when I do this. And so a condition of financing on an offer would be, I will finalize my offer when I have secured my mortgage. Okay, so that's a condition of financing. So we didn't see those in days gone by. So you took a bit of a risk going in, buying a house saying, I'm coming in and I'm guaranteeing I'm getting the mortgage. So that's what Joe was referencing. But now with the softening a bit of the market, some sellers are accepting the condition of financing. So allowing you to put an offer in the home and give you 5 days to go back to Joe or whomever to secure that financing. So that's what that sort of means. And I think when Joe, I mean, he can navigate and make it all come together. And I'm not sure if he touched on it at the front. I missed the first part of what he said, but one of the benefits of going to a mortgage agent, like someone like Joe, is that they represent all of those types of lenders that are there. So you're not having to find them. You go to Joe and you get an application done, and then he matches and shops around, in effect, for the best deal for you. You can also get a mortgage through the bank that you bank with, but they're just representing the particular bank that they work for. When you deal with a mortgage agent, there's a little more flexibility because they can shop around and get a lender that best suits your situation if you're self-employed or what have you. So there's just a little bit more information, but lots and lots of scenarios and possibilities. So we don't want to overwhelm, just give you sort of the fact that there are considerations and every situation is different. So don't forget to you book some time with me and I'll talk about the situation and I'll talk about the market. And I often am connecting you with Joe to get that application going, because that is really the starting point when you're shopping is knowing what that ceiling, as he said, of what you can purchase there, right? So please do remember that I'm here and book some time with me and we can get you some information to get your path going. So as I mentioned, there was some creative ways about buying a home, and I wanted to sort of give you some strategies and some real life examples of clients that I've worked with, and give you maybe some ideas on how you can approach the market. Um, and keeping in mind, who could be a potential co-signer if you're not meeting requirements, who you could co-buy with, that type of thing. So the concept of buying with someone is just that. And, maybe that, as I touched on, is that a sibling? Is that a parent? Is that your partner? Is that someone that's in the same situation as you? And, that for some people makes some people nervous because I'm in effect doing a financial commitment with someone, and there's risk with that. But there's ways to mitigate that risk, and that's by, having discussions, setting up legal agreements, simple ones, so that when you approach that buy, you could maybe approach a friend of yours that's, and I've seen it done, that is in the same situation that you're in, and you can, on your own, still remain in that situation for a very long time, trying to gather up down payments or do something like that. Or you can pool your resources, but determine, hey, we're going to do a 5-year commitment to this. That's all we're doing. You have an agreement that spells out, who's going to buy whom out, or what does that look like? A lawyer helps step you through that, but you have those open discussions so that, the benefit of that is that you're going to be in the market, and you're both moving forward in building your own equity and your own financial stability. But it doesn't have to be forever. You can predetermine that time, and within 5 years, often you'll be able to split off and buy your own things, or some people I've seen, they keep that property as a joint investment and go off and buy their own property. So there's lots and lots of possibilities. So definitely a way to enter the market is buying with someone that, when you're not on your own. So I have this great family that I work with that has just got so many examples of buying together and different things that they've done. So just as an example, the brother bought a home. It was the outskirts of Hamilton, and it needed to have some work done on it. So he renovated it. He completely renovated the basement, and he built a basement apartment. Well, he rents out that basement apartment, continues to fix up his upstairs, but what he generates in rent for the basement apartment covers the bulk of all of his mortgage from that. So he's just happy to do that because he knows he's not going to be there forever, but it's just a period of time that he's doing that. And then what it allowed him to do is, because he had extra income freed up, he was able to gather enough down payment, and he co-bought a new build condo. So it was a condo that was being built, and it was out 3 years out. So he had to put a down payment down. And then as those years passed, when it came to, and it's just I think any day now is going to be built, and they're either someone's going to live in it, or they're going to they'll sell it and take the proceeds. So, freeing up how he used his money allowed him to leverage and live at home, his own home very affordably by having a rented basement, and free up time to buy something else with a friend of his that they co-bought something together. And then the sister also went and took some money out and she worked with her parents, and they bought a cottage, and it's in Manitoulin Island, so it's I think like a 5-hour drive. So they don't go every weekend, but they book how many weekends they want to go. Then they rent it out the rest of the time. So they generate a nice, quaint little pocket of income from that property, and they use it. They pick the dates they want to go, and then they just rent it out for the rest of the time. And they're building equity by paying down their mortgage through, and they're not even have to pay that. The rental income generates that, right? And their youngest brother was struggling because the brother and the other sister, the sister and the other brother are buying all of these things, and he was still living at home. So then they pooled their resources and they bought another vacation property with that whole intent to pay down the mortgage through the rental income. And then they'll sell that off, so he'll have enough money for a down payment of something of his own. So like, such a great family. One day I want to actually have them speak about what they're doing, because it's just pretty inspirational and what you can do when you pool your resources with a common goal to help and build. So it's really a great family. So those are some examples of how you can work with someone, buy something, don't worry about it being long-term forever in that. Real estate in general is long-term forever, but the pieces along the way may change forms as you get there. Okay, there's just 3 strategies. So this is number 2. And so this is buying for an investment. Now that might sound scary going, oh, how can I be an investor? I'm just a first-time home buyer, but it happens. And I have an example of one here. So that's like buying, a property and renting out maybe the upstairs and the downstairs, or like the Thompsons, renting out part, living in part. Buying that cottage, buying buying a property that is not going to be your primary residence and primary forever. And some people I've seen, they actually live at home and they do something like this because it gets them in the market. So if there's revenue that's generated from that, that helps pay that down. And, there's just something to be said that if you're struggling and feeling bad about not being able to get into the market, knowing you're in the market, even if it's an investment property, is just such an empowering situation. And that you're taking advantage of, building equity in this, in the great market of real estate. So with that, if you're going to go into an investment or a rental property, for example, then you become a landlord, right? And I am speaking from experience. One of my first properties, when they moved out and broke 9 windows, 9 windows, and they jammed the toilet so full that we had to replace it. I don't know. There was like action figures down there. I don't even know, right? But it was, they damaged so much. And we thought we did a good job on pre-vetting them, but this is where checking credit bureaus and all of that. Learned a lot along the way. But now I have, I have a couple of rental properties and I know what to do. And that's, usually I've always worked with a realtor and the realtor will put it out on MLS and pre-vet everything for me. There's the cost of doing that. But I always, before I was a realtor myself, I always did that as just that arm's length vetting ground. There's also property managers that are companies that will, for a percentage of that, will source your tenants, collect the rent, deal with any maintenance issues, of course, for a fee. So there's ways around it, so it doesn't always sort of have to be risky. So definitely buying something rather than your first home for you, looking to have an investment. And I'm going to introduce you to Nicholas. And Nicholas also, this takes advantage of like looking out of town. Nicholas, he was he's working through to get his trade papers in mechanics. And even though he earned a good income, the house that he wanted to buy or that his fiance wanted to buy, they wanted to buy together, he just couldn't justify having to spend that much money because he was still getting his papers. He didn't want to be that committed to something, but he wanted to be in the market. So they live in Georgetown. So we looked at the different pockets that what could his pre-approved budget buy him. We ended up in the Niagara region because the Niagara region does have some good pockets of more affordability because the further that you get from the Toronto region, generally the prices have dropped, although they've gone up everywhere. So we ended up in the Niagara region and ultimately in Port Colborne, super cute town. He paid $334 for this little home. Yeah, and this wasn't 3 years ago. This was last summer, fall. Prices have gone up a little bit since then, but he was able to buy this home on a huge property. It was 2 bedrooms, but the people before had converted it to a 1 bedroom. He happened to have 20% down. He had lost his father just recently and he had some money, so it was unfortunate, but he was able to take that and get the 20% down, put money into renos. And now it's not costing him anything because he's renting it to a reliable family member. And he is growing equity every month by that mortgage being serviced by someone else. And he's already looking on his next deal. So he sends me over things and he's even looking out of province. So Port Colborne wasn't far enough for him. Now he's looking for the East Coast and doing opportunities there. So a way that for not a huge commitment financially, he at least was able to get into something, and it was small enough of a deal that he still has a little bit of room to be able to buy something else. So that is the story of Nicholas. And my third strategy is something else, and that's buying for the future. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's something that you're not going to move into anytime soon, but you know that you're going to move into it and you're saving your down payment, or you've already put your down payment down. And that is the case of what they call future builds or pre-construction. So homes, condos, townhouses that will be built off, 1, 2, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. So that's a way, typically you put the down payment in now, you know you're going to go there, and often, typically from when the shovel hits the ground, they're worth more than you paid for it. So automatically you're building that equity. That's typically how it works, and those are available everywhere. And we're not going to get into a lot, but there's a term called assignments. What happens, because 1, 2, 3, 4 years out, this construction is going to happen, some people's lives change in those 4 years, and they might want to get out of their deal. So those deals, if you were to purchase something that's not yet built and you're buying it from someone that already committed to that, that's called an assignment deal. And sometimes there's deals to be made. Joe would have to talk about the creativity of financing, but that again is a way you can take advantage of future building, dealing with that. There's people that specialize in that kind of work. So that's sort of another sort of scenario. So looking to the future, again, feeling really good about knowing you're going to be in the market. You are, it's just not ready yet. And there's another type of ownership, and that is called fractional ownership. And there's 2 websites that I've put here, buyproperly.ca and addieinvest.com. So feel free to screenshot that or write those down if you're interested at all. I'm not endorsing those companies, but what they do is for very small increments, one I think is $250 or like $1,000 or more, you buy a small piece of a building along with a number of other people. And when you go to sell, in effect, like shares, you sell it for more than you put in, if provided the value of that property has gone up. So you can get into the market buying fractionally a portion of a building. So you don't own it outright and you don't ever live in it, but it's a way that you can take advantage of the growth of the market by buying a little piece of that. And there's many companies, but those are just 2 that I am aware of. And there's something else that I just recently met with someone about, and that is a 3rd one that's not on this slide, and that is called rent to own. That's a whole other sort of scenario, but it's especially appropriate for someone that maybe has very poor credit, where they don't have enough down payment. Basically, you work with a firm that has an investor that they match you with, and you pick your house, but it's bought by an investor, and then you buy it from that investor at predetermined prices when your credit's improved and when you have more money, and it's all pre-done, and the amount of the payments and schedules are all set. So not common, but it's alternative ways that you can look at things. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention. And like I said, there's so much information. I hope we haven't overwhelmed you too much. So please book that time with me. Sarah will put it in the chat so that we can talk about the scenarios and sort of set up a little start of a roadmap, get you sort of knowing what your ceiling of your purchase price is and what the options are to, so that you can plan for your future. So, and I guess what I wanted to do is give you one last final example of Chris, who he was another young guy that was still an electrical apprentice. He was living at home and he really wanted to buy this house. So he used all of these concepts. He co-bought with his grandmother. And so he got some of the down payment he had. She had a lot of that. She was his co-signer. And he hardly lived in the house, I think for a short period of time, but there was a main floor and a downstairs. He rented out both of them. At one point he rented them to the same people, then he had different tenants. He stayed there for a while, but he had different scenarios over the 5 years. He, just a few months ago, was at the 5-year mark of having his house. So it was an investment because he had the rentals. He bought it with someone else, and he was buying it for his future, because what happened is at the 5-year mark, he had enough money paid down from the tenants paying his mortgage, plus he had done some improvements. The market had gone up so much in value. He was able to refinance, get enough money out to pay back his grandmother, put it fully in his name. And now he's thinking he'll move in or not. He's not sure. And he may even sell it and buy something else, but his future is stabilized by this situation. And for the most part, he still lived at home throughout this. And in 5 years, he actually gained, if you can imagine, about $400,000 worth of equity. A big portion of the gain, but there was also a pay down of about $80,000, I think it was, from what he purchased it for. So really significant gains by being creative. And he was fortunate he had it, his grandmother was able to help. But yeah, that's an example of what I wanted to share. So that kind of covers it as far as sort of the examples. Remember, Joe talked about the income, the down payment, and the credit. Lots of scenarios, lots of possibilities with that. I've talked about the creative strategies when you've got the money in place of buying with someone or investing or looking to your future. So again, all of those come together to, in some form, for your own particular path, book some time with me. We can talk about it. I'm definitely will be connecting you with Joe if you're interested. We would be happy to help you, but we're not going anywhere because we're going to, I'm going to talk about just a couple of little last tips and then we'll go to the question and answer. Because typically we lost a number of people here with the technical difficulties there. People are at various stages in their home buying journey, we find on these webinars. So this is sort of conceptually how you can buy, how you get the money in place. If you're a little bit further along or even not, it's good value. I've written a little handbook here that is at that link. I will also send a link out, and it is available through there's tips on the YouTube channel and also links at the top of my bio and my Instagram. So make sure you're connected, Heidi Brown Homes, remember? But this is the link. We've got copies of this that you can download. If you want a print copy, just message me and I can mail you one. But it really steps through what you really need to go. And I won't go into the details, that's a whole other seminar, but the importance of meeting with Joe or a counterpart like that first to get your money in order. You need experts like a realtor, your lawyer, maybe a home inspector, all of those people lined up. You want your cash readily available because when you go shopping, you're going to have to put a deposit down. So you don't want it in an RSP because that's an option. Again, there's ways that you can get money, which is why you got to book with Joe or Mai. And there's certain ways that you can strengthen your offer going ahead. So it will be touched on here. We'll be happy to talk about it specifically for you, but I wanted to let you know that there are specific things post this webinar that can definitely help you get into the market. So now over to you. Joe is going to field any questions that are in the chat and be able to answer them. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Joe, if there's anything interesting in the chat that people have asked.
Okay, there we go. What's the validity of a pre-approval? Great question. Validity of pre-approval. There really is no validity to a pre-approval, to be honest with you. The lenders do not look at applications until there is an accepted offer to purchase. Okay, so if I send a lender an application for pre-approval, basically what they do is they look at the credit bureau, they look at the application, they take it at face value, they don't review any of the paperwork, and they just kind of spit a certificate out at you. So it's not worth the paper that it's written on. The only thing that a pre-approval from a lender is good for is holding an interest rate. That is very important because interest rates, as you know, are going up very fast. Like literally every week they keep going up and up. The 5-year fixed rates are going up literally every week. So the pre-approval is basically me. I look at your paperwork, I look at your credit bureau, I look at your application, I look at your down payment verification, I look at your whole scenario, and using my experience, I basically say this is what you're pre-approved for. And then what I do is I also submit your application to a couple of lenders to hold an interest rate. Interest rates are held for up to 120 days. I think that's the only question. Do you guys have any other questions? Feel free to type them in there. I love questions. I'm happy to answer them. Or for Heidi. Okay. As a first-time home buyer, can I pay 5% down payment even if the house is 1 to 1.5 million? Another good question. Okay, so no, you can't. If the purchase price is $1 million or higher, you have to have at least 20%. Most lenders will require more than 20%. So how that works is, you say the purchase price is 1.5 million, you would need to have 200,000 for the first million, and then 35% for anything that's over a million. So what is that? 150. Oh God, it's too late to do math, but you get it. It's called a sliding scale. So 35% for every dollar that's over a million, 20% for everything that's under a million. If you're buying something that's, say, 900,000, the way that it works is it's 5% of the first 500,000. And then every dollar that's over 500,000, it's 10%. So to use an easier number, let's just say you want to buy for 600,000. The minimum down payment on 600,000 is actually $35,000, right? 5% of 500,000, which is 25,000. 10% of 100,000, which is 10,000, gives you 35,000. Okay. Great questions. Any other questions?
If there's nothing more, I mean, we had a lean group because of all our issues that were at the beginning. But as you can see with the scenario, you did pretty good on the math there, Joe, this time of night. But there, a few little complications. Oh, I think one more. Was there more questions?
Oh, yeah. Okay, one more question. How interest rates impact house prices. So really, interest rates cause payments to go up, right? If your interest rate is higher, your payment is higher. If your payment is higher, then that's going to decrease the amount of mortgage that you qualify for. It's also going to decrease the amount of mortgage that people are comfortable with, right? So for instance, if your interest, like, so before, just like 3 months ago, you could get an interest rate of, like, say, 2.5%. That person, that person's payment would be, almost half of what it is today, right? Because today, that same interest rate is probably like 4.5%, right? So the comfort of the lack of comfort with a much bigger mortgage payment could cause people to basically to buy something less expensive. And again, qualification goes down as well. Payment goes up. Therefore, the amount you qualify for goes down, and that could cause prices to, go down a little bit. We still have, I think Heidi touched on this a little bit. We still have massive shortages in inventory. So, yeah, that was a great question. Newcomers to Canada, if they wish to access traditional lending sources, they have to wait 2 years first to build credit before trying to purchase something. Okay, so there are programs for new to Canada. There's quite a few of them. You can even do it with as little as, I think there's still a 5% down product for new to Canada, but it's tough to qualify for. So 10% is a lot easier. What they'll do is they'll use alternative credit sources like, say, utility bills or confirmation that you've paid your rent as agreed for a year, right? In some cases, depending on what country you're coming from, they might even use an international credit bureau. Okay, so there are options for people who are new to Canada, but just remember though that you have to be a landed citizen or permanent resident. You can't be a foreign buyer. If you're a foreign buyer, then you're going to get hit with the foreign buyer tax, and you're not going to qualify with traditional lenders. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Who is that from? Crystal. Great question, Crystal. Oh, if my income last year was 70,000 and it is 150,000 this year, That's a pretty good raise in 1 year, more than double. Why can't I get a raise like that? Which income will be more important for a mortgage amount? Okay, if it's a salary, 150,000, right? Your salary is 150,000. It's 150,000. If it's not a salary, like if you're like an hourly employee, you didn't work too much last year. This year you worked. This year you worked a ton. You made way more money. Then what we do is we would take a 2-year average. So 150 and 70 added up, divide by 2. That's the income that we could use. Yeah, I hope that clarifies that. Any other questions, guys? I think
That's it.
everybody asked a
Well, it
question.
doesn't end here because there's our, on the screen there's our email and our contact information, so you can reach out to us directly if you have any other questions. And don't forget to book some time with me. That's the link there that Sarah's been sharing with you. But please do reach out. Reach out to me. I'll connect you with Joe if you didn't catch all of that. But we're here to help, and we're thankful that you got through the technical difficulties. And don't forget to, also have a look at the book, connect with us at Heidi Brown Homes on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And thank you so much. Stay tuned for more great topics, maybe something more on newcomers coming this fall. We're taking a break for the summer, but thank you for your time, and watch out for your messages. You're going to be getting some links and information. There'll be a survey we'd like you to fill out for us, and we'll be getting the webinar from tonight sent out to you, as well as some information. So thanks so much for your time, and have yourself a safe night. Bye-bye.